Hi friends, it's Caitlin and welcome back to the Floating Rock Podcast. I hope you're having the most incredible day ever. So, today, I feel like I've been having a lot of conversations recently regarding rest, and honestly, I feel like I keep bringing it up to you guys as well, and I'm like, okay, this has been following me around, very interesting, and I'm like, you know what, might as well tap into it again, because I feel like when you keep learning micro lessons under the umbrella of a big lesson, like that usually means something, and I just feel like there's a lot to learn in so many categories, especially when it comes to rest and stuff like that. But yeah, I've just been having a lot of conversations about rest and balance and rejuvenation and just even being in your 20s. Like everything's weird at this point in life, you know? A lot of us are not in those big, the jobs that you have when you're 40, and, that kind of balance looks a lot different than the balance we're dealing with right now. And I don't know, I just kind of thought I'd get into it today about the idea that your life is more important than your productivity. Or, the title's a work in progress, but maybe I titled it something like, you are not a productivity machine, you're a human. And I think that we live in such a fast-paced, career-centered world full of tons of expectations, and especially at a time in your 20s, like I feel like there's so much pressure to have things figured out. And I've just heard so many people having so much stress because they don't have shit figured out, and that's okay, and I don't have shit figured out either. And I don't know, I think like a really big point of turmoil, like inner turmoil that a lot of us have, is this kind of conflicting feeling of wanting to be this productivity machine and ignoring the fact that you are a human. And I feel like I can definitely argue both sides. I had an episode about this a long time ago about how no advice is right, and it was just me talking about how kind of no matter what, anything you say about one thing is probably going to be wrong to somebody, or it's going to be wrong for a different mindset. Like if I say your life, your human experience is more important than your productivity, someone could totally argue the other. Like if you have that mindset, then you're not going to get anything done in your life. It's like, yeah, like once again, everything's about balance. And today I'm playing the side of the human experience and your life and your interactions over your productivity. But watch me come on next week and be like, this is how to master your workflow. But that's the beauty of life and conversation and everything, is there is balance and nothing is perfect. And it reminds me too of something I feel like I say about people a lot, is like people are multifaceted. Like it's so easy to just want to fully dislike somebody or something like that when you just like, there's something you don't like about them, and it's like, man, they might have redeeming qualities or they might have decent traits and just stuff like that. But anyway, I guess this stems from personally, and from what I've kind of collected from other people who I feel like are similar to me, or even just in our 20s, and like just people in general. I feel like recently, and maybe not even that recently, there has just been this like overwhelming feeling of, if I'm not being productive, it's not productive. Like almost like this addiction to productivity. I think a lot of us have this addiction to productivity, especially if you're like a more ambitious kind of person. Like a lot of us are addicted to this feeling of productivity. And that's great, and you get shit done, and I love it. However, you're a human. And I just feel like I have even personally found myself, maybe I've done something just for the sake of it, or I don't know, like do you ever like have a day where you kind of just like do something really random, or maybe you kind of get stuck doing something, or you get stuck extra long in a conversation and you're like, I was really going to use this time to get something done, but it's like, hold your horses, diva, like just live through it, just experience through it. And I don't know, I just feel like I've found this in myself and like in other people's experiences as well, of just like this guilt of when you're not being productive. And I just wanted to like talk about it a little bit more, because while I do think productivity is so awesome, and I for one am definitely addicted to it, I feel like I've been finding a lot of, is solace the right word? Solace, sure. Comfort, fulfillment in those moments of non-productivity, and trying to learn, I guess, to be okay with it. Like, of course you're feeling fulfillment from those human moments, but it's more so trying to not fight that fulfillment and trying to actually relish in it and trying not to feel guilty for it. It reminds me too of, okay, so as we know, I'm in that pageant, right? I placed, and so I'm going to be on this court for a whole year, and we recently had the coronation ball this weekend, which literally sounds so crazy. Like, Sophia the First, thank you! It was this big night, 500 people, everyone's wearing their best clothes, and, we kind of took our reign officially, and then the group from last year kind of stepped down, and the MC made this joke about, like, oh, now they have to return to real life, and it was just, I felt like it was, like, an interesting way to kind of frame this topic as well, of like not having the productivity guilt and just like looking at life multifacetedly as well, and kind of seeing everything almost as productive in a way. And I feel like it's counterintuitive to like see human experience and connection as productive. I'm using air quotes if you're not watching, but it's like, yeah, it's the best way to explain it. So like, it made me think, like, when you're in this flow state of being super, super productive, it's almost like you have the crown. You're in your year of the reign of your pageant title, if you will. And you can do all this stuff and all this career and this and that. And this is going to get dark for a second, but maybe it will make my point. But the way I kind of saw it was like, once that crown is off and once you're no longer the first princess of whatever, or the queen of this and the queen of that, you're just a girl. You're just Caitlin, per se. And those things that you thought held so much weight, the person that you even thought you were, like this stature that you would walk into a room with, is kind of different. Dare I say it's kind of gone. And in my head, it kind of reminds me too of dark. I'm like, okay, you live this whole life chasing certain things, living up to certain things, being this certain version of yourself. But one day you're on the deathbed and you're like, wow, will I really remember? I don't know. I tell myself this sometimes when I get held up and I'm having this productivity guilt and I'm just like living. And especially it makes me think too when you're doing, honestly, those things that are a little bit more irresponsible, a little bit more immature. When you're being a 22-year-old girl, when you're being a 23-year-old guy, you know what I mean? Like those things that are like a little bit juvenile, if you will. But it's like, when you're 80, are you going to remember how many reels you posted on TikTok, how long that discussion post was? Or are you going to remember that one night out? Or are you going to remember that one morning that you stayed a little bit too long at the coffee shop talking to your friend and you relate to this one thing? Like, you're going to remember those human moments far more than you are going to remember your productivity. And I just think that's important to remember, because I think we are all just so addicted to it, myself included. Like, I just thought it was an interesting way to look at it as, you know, if you decrown yourself from these expectations that you have, if you decrown yourself from what you think you need to do every single day, obviously these things are all very, very important. You decrown yourself from this addiction to productivity. What do you actually prioritize? And what are going to be those really important moments in your life and those things that fill you up? And great transition, Caitlin. So then it makes me think, I looked up the actual definition of productivity, because you know sometimes you can find a little deeper meaning, if you will, but it basically was like the act of producing, right? And as we know, we're a big fan of balance here on the Floating Rock podcast. And if you also have been listening, I've mentioned it a few times now in my Chinese culture pageant. I've learned a lot more about like yin and yang, and everything, at least in Chinese belief systems, is kind of based off of that. And I kind of fuck with it. But to be producing all the goddamn time is not healthy. You know, think about a factory. If all it does is produce, one day it's going to run out of material. You know, like, you need to have input to have output. And obviously not a factory, but sometimes I think a lot of us work like that. And I think what a interesting recent realization of mine was that I feel like we're kind of fed sometimes what this rejuvenation, what this input should look like, what rest should look like. I was having a conversation with Malia about this recently. And actually, side note, really funny. We were talking, she was like, oh, I really haven't listened to the pod recently, like, since I've been home with you. And I'm like, honestly valid, because every single episode I'm like, so I was talking to Malia about this. If you're new here, Malia is my best friend who I apparently fucking talk about everything with. Anyway, so we're talking about this idea of rest and how neither of us is incredible at it. And I'm just like airing her dirty laundry. Anyway, but we're talking about that. And I specifically am very, very bad at sitting and watching a movie. Like, genuinely, I have one singular memory, and it was, I think, was it during COVID? I have one memory of a time that I intentionally sat down by myself, made myself a little snack, and watched a movie for rest. I am very much not good at that. I'm not good at that sitting still kind of rest and rejuvenation. Like, it's just not my forte, you know? And when I am good at it, it's more of an unhealthy kind of sit and rest where it turns more into a doom scroll, or, you know, that kind of thing, distraction on your phone. And I think what's important with this whole kind of topic is input output. Very, very important. If you are going to be this productivity machine, realistically, we all kind of have to have this balance of input and output. We all have to be productive. It's that addiction that's a bad thing when there's so much more output than input. And I think where this all ties together is reevaluating what you think that input is. And I personally, back to the title, I think that your life and I think that your human experiences are that input. And I think a lot of the time we frame rest and input as this solitude, alone time, sedentariness. Whereas I really do think you can gain so much more. And I'm going to use the word rejuvenation again. You can, water yourself if you're a plant so much more through these human interactions. And I don't know, personally, I feel so motivated to get my work done after me and Malia have a fun day together, or after we even have a fun hour together, stuff like that. Like, I really do think that having a grand old time, that is some of the best rest I think you could ever get. And even too, I feel like I've also seen this recently within myself and maybe even others, I don't know. Me and Malia kind of talked about this recently as well, of like, when it comes to like conversation, I think sometimes like a lot of us are like trying to have the deepest and most interesting conversation ever. But along with this human experience stuff, it doesn't mean to be having the most philosophical conversation ever down by a river. It means like making fart noises with your friend. It means like just like being silly and funny. And we realized, Millie and I, we were like, wow, like we don't talk about career stuff as much as you would think that we would, given that we kind of not doing similar things, but like the essence of what we're both trying to do is sort of similar in a way. Like you would think we'd talk about it a little bit more. And we did the other day. I was like kind of like going off about something. And honestly, halfway through, I was like, I don't want to be talking about this with her. I want to be having silly, fun conversations with my best friend and not talking about the cinematography of this. And I was like, shut up, save it for the film people. Overall, guys, I guess this episode's going to be shorter than I thought, but I come on here today to ask you to reevaluate, number one, your addiction to productivity, because you probably have one, or you don't, and if you don't, iconic, very iconic. You can leave now. Actually, please don't. Give me the full view. But number one, reevaluate. Do you have this addiction to productivity? And that's the first step, is knowing that you're addicted. And secondly, giving yourself grace and trying to shed that feeling of guilt when you are just being a human and when you accidentally or intentionally prioritize just like living over getting things done. I think that guilt can be heavy, and I think it actually slows down your productivity. And yeah, I don't know, recently it's been heavy on my mind. I think we all have like these big ambitions and we want to do a lot of big things in our life. And I, as you know, if you're not, as we know, I'm a big fan of doing big things and doing the absolute most. But I think you kind of can lose sight of everything if that's all that you're thinking about. If you neglect, I actually heard this one saying a while ago, and I hope it actually ties in, but it was this idea that some colonizer guy comes to this village and he sees a man fishing, and the guy's fishing for fun. He's like chilling out, and the guy's like, "Oh, you're catching a lot of fish. Like, you should get a bigger net. And then once you get the bigger net, you can get more fish. And once you get more fish, you can have enough money to hire people. And then once you hire people to fish for you, then you can just sit back and rest and fish." But that's what he was doing the entire time. Like sometimes I think we like fight for these things that we think are going to give us those other human experiences or that freedom or whatever. But it's like, maybe you already have it, or maybe you already have slivers of it, and you're ignoring what's in your reality and what's so great about your reality right now because you're chasing just a different font of it. And it's like, wait, Diva, no, you have it. You have the good friends. You have the room that makes you happy. You have, like, I don't know, I just think in the world we live in, it's very easy to lose sight of prioritizing and appreciating just your human moments and feeling guilty for them. And especially in your 20s, these are the years that we all look back on, the years that people, your grandparents and just random old people, like they look back like, oh, my 20s. And I think it's starting to kick in now that I've out of college. Like now I'm looking back, I'm like, wow, I'm done there and I can't go back. Like, that's insane. And not even in like a sad way, but like, if that's a good way to frame it for you, like think about college. Do you really remember many of your projects that you did, or do you remember those in-between moments? Because the in-between moments are very important. Realistically, they're what you're going to remember. And I'm encouraging you today to stop feeling guilty for that. And dare I say, even prioritize it at times, because that is just as productive as getting your shit done. Oh, look at her going off today. Yep. Projecting as per usual. Thank you, divas. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that maybe this made you think a little bit, and maybe this made you feel like, you know what, just because I slept in or had a slower morning or talked to this person for way longer, whatever, like I just hope that maybe this inspired you to feel less guilty about living your goddamn life and being in your 20s, or if you're in your 30s, being in your 30s, like just live, girl. We only have one life, and especially with the crazy world we have, like if you just have the privilege to live and be happy about it, that is like the best thing in the world. Productivity is a fucking privilege. Okay, thank you for listening. Peace and love and peace. I hope that was coherent. Maybe. Yeah. Okay, bye friends.